The forecast said that there'd be snowflakes. Whoa, you can make us see it your way. No way, gasoline and propane, more flames. Oh no, no more snowflakes.
We can all get along, but there's no stopping. Ay, everybody's wrong, that's a real problem. Ay, they don't want to hear it, but they still talking. Ay, soon enough, we running out of options. Ay, this ain't gonna end till it's in the coffin. Ay, we ain't gonna be friends till we try to squash it. Ay, I don't know how we can make amends or we drop it. Snowflakes melt when it's hot, kid.
Y'all are so fake. Oh no, the forecast said that there'd be snowflakes. Whoa, you can make us see it your way. No way, gasoline and propane, more flames. Oh no, no more snowflakes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you folks doing tonight on this beautiful, beautiful July evening? I am joined here with Sue McClure and Alex Blue.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Amária will not be able to join us this evening, as we wish her safe travels, as she is in the Lone Star State. But for this show, you'll be with us, this wonderful Three Musketeers, as we go into the world of the Georgia Guidestones, the Hadron Collider, and how that may be affecting things such as the idea of portals and jumpings and all these other things, like some type of Stranger Things stuff. Anywho.
Well, you know what, on the bright side here, we're kind of all back together like we were when we first started, the Alex, Sue, and Sue.
There you go.
Yeah.
Once again. United once again.
So, well, I was actually concerned when they wanted to bring back all the colliding machine and the CERN and all that stuff. And I was worried that we were going to see Mandela effects like nobody's business or time shifts and things like that. So I'm grateful that it hasn't gotten bad yet.
Well, we've actually had at least one Mandela effect, if I can remember. But
really?
But it's different than one of our run-of-the-mill ones. What I saw recently was a reversion Mandela effect. Okay, so it's something that we were familiar with, and then when the Mandela effect, it changes it. Well, this Mandela effect counteracts that previous one. Interesting, right? And
so are we going back to the Bernstein Bears one?
No, this is.
I'm kidding.
No, this has to do with Fruit Loops.
Wow.
Because Fruit Loops was originally spelled, and is currently spelled FOOUT loops, and the Mandela effect was it actually spelled just regular fruit loops. So they actually went back to the original spelling.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
I
So
think
are they spelling it with two O's, or are they spelling it how fruit is spelled now then?
it has reverted back to the double O's.
Wow.
So it's almost as if the timelines are resisting alteration.
It may be repairing itself.
It's a possibility. Time may be. It reminds me of something that I remember listening. If you guys are familiar with the Camelot Project.
Oh yes, Project Camelot.
There was that gentleman. He was dealt with a lot of dark black projects. It was the if you remember him, he was wearing a I think he was wearing a white like not like it wasn't like a dress shirt. And he was like the one that
ex-military, wasn't he? With the black suit.
Yeah, he dealt with like Looking Glass.
Yes. Right.
And he's the one that a lot of us attribute to the chessboard analogy.
Uh-huh.
And he was, and how, with when it came to 2012, how the timeline like solidified itself. You couldn't use looking glass anymore because all of a sudden now we're in that point in a video game, if you will, where they say, well, this is the point where if you don't save, you're never going to be able to go back, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened. We're just kind of stuck on this path now. No matter how we change, no matter how many times the Hadron Collider does things or anybody else tries to do things, it doesn't do it like they want him. I mean, yes, they did energy as hard as they can, and they had 2 new elements, but are these ours or are they from another dimension?
It makes you wonder how much of time is actually a fixed point that you can't do anything to it versus what you can do to it, I guess it depends how relevant something is or how big it is.
Well, and let's add another layer onto this, which is yeah, go ahead. Uh-oh, froze.
Uh-oh. Yeah.
Did we lose him?
Uh-oh. He's been having trouble with his audio lately.
We need audio CPR, Alex.
Yeah. Do you want to go for it, Dr. Bloom?
What
I was just going to say is I was listening to a fascinating podcast on my flight over here, and they were talking about this somewhat well-known theory that the Guidestones was built upon a ley line. And so
yes, I've heard that.
It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. But I think that even, the Guidestones is sort of a Stonehenge kind of a thing, and Stonehenge were also built on the ley lines as well. But they say that it was possibly built on government property, which actually questions, there's a lot of government property stuff connected to the ley lines.
Mm-hmm.
So that wouldn't be surprising either. But the power of ley line, things built on ley lines, do we want to briefly tell people what the importance of the ley lines are?
Well, this goes back thousands of years, but the essential concept is that Earth is covered in an invisible magnetic field, almost like a net. And so think about those like a square, right? That there's lines that move from one nodal point to another. And each node is where these ley lines intersect with one another. And it creates an energetic crossroad, if you will. And so all over the world, very strategically on these ley lines are US military bases or obelisks and whatnot. And there's a school of thought that says in ancient Egypt that they capitalized on these ley lines, and that's where they placed the obelisks, because that is where the energy was capitalized upon in order to act as almost like Wi-Fi boosters. And they could use the energy to like boost the signal from obelisk to obelisk. And then when the dark energies took over, they basically co-opted, if you will, all the different ley lines by putting these kind of dark or satanic related buildings or sacrifices for black magic spells and things along those lines to kind of commandeer the energy toward the dark. So it's interesting then with this who knows what it was. I mean, we can get into the weeds here, which is very fascinating, but I saw initial footage of what had caused the destruction on one particular stone at the Guidestones. And it was unmistakably some sort of lightning bolt or energy rod or something coming from out of screen downward at an angle. and it hit the stone, and you could see as a result of that the stone shards then blew out in that opposite direction. And then later in the day, I saw a different video, and this was the supposed official video released by the police and whatnot, and it showed a smoke coming off to the side, and they said that it was most likely a bomb or an explosion related to that. But I'm thinking, okay, but then you'd have to have footage of a person, not just this mysterious gray car that could have been spliced from anywhere. And so it didn't add up. And then I went back and I watched the footage again, and sure enough, it's two separate videos that have been very quickly glued together. And having seen the original footage first, you see the initial part of that during the second video, but then it's spliced with this completely different video of smoke coming out. And the biggest flag for me was how at 4 a.m., very interesting timing, when the structure was hit, that then later in that day, there aren't police tape scenario. I mean, there was police tape, but there wasn't a scenario where, hey, we need to quarantine this off. This was an official structure approved by the city, and now it's a crime scene, and we need to try to figure out what happened. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, within hours, comes this bulldozer out of nowhere and knocks the whole thing down. And then that next morning, I was hearing whispers of the time capsule being removed. And that in of itself is interesting of, is this real? And then later on, I saw supposedly an official news article saying that it was debunked and the contents were not officially what it was supposed to be. And even within that, the contents were very odd. I guess it could have been legit in terms of potential, comms of some sort, but I don't know. I don't know if you guys have heard anything, but it didn't really add up to me.
I heard that it was that there was content inside. They actually found a physical one, and this was the Georgia Historical Society, and it was 3 items. I can't remember off the top of my head.
What I heard, it was 3,000 quaaludes, which equates to hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes.
That then supposedly were going to be destroyed. And then there was a Playboy from the early 1980s. And what else was there? There's something else.
I think usually when they keep dull things like that, there's actually a message inside of those things. Like inside the quote article part, because they have a word decoder. It kind of looks like a plastic or wooden piece. I mean, it can be any material, but it's got holes in it exactly where the letters that are important are supposed to be.
All right. Which is, what's interesting about this whole thing is that the media they basically whitewashed the damn thing. They went into freaking nothing to see here mode when they came up. So they found 4 items: a single 8-track tape of Saturday Night Fever, a Peterbilt emblem, a October 1979 Playboy magazine signed by Burt Reynolds, and a bag containing 1,734 Quaalude pills.
Interesting.
That's interesting. Yeah. I really think that they wouldn't have gone through that much trouble just for all of that. So there has to be something more to it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And on the bottom, it says
not worth the cover up.
Right.
And if you look at the actual time capsule, it says time capsule buried here November 6, 1988. to be open Easter of 2050 AD. So this was opened 30 years early.
So the only thing that I can think of is that this was kind of like your initial theory that you were saying, Alex, like potential rods of God, or
Yeah.
What's the other technology that I'm thinking of?
You're talking about a directed energy?
Yes, thank you. But like something from Space Force that would have been done, let's say, by the Patriots to kind of indicate, well, even back to what 17 was saying, right? That like the first domino to fall or something along those lines.
Well, I don't like the idea of the dew, because the dew would show there will at least be some type of scarring on the other on the other stones, which there was not.
Yeah,
because dews are there is the theory that dews are being used for a lot of the fires in California.
Mm-hmm.
A rods of God could be one of these things where it depends on what type of ordinance you're using. If I may explain it for people who may not be familiar.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so the rods of God is a satellite-based kinetic weapon. It can be so the traditional ordnance that is used is a titanium bar, or the size of a telephone pole, and it just drops it onto the ground. And as you're entering entry velocity, that thing is going to create a lot of momentum, a lot of potential energy, and then it just hits the earth with the force of a nuclear bomb without any fallout whatsoever. The thing is, you can actually edit what type of ordnance it is. So that's the traditional one. Some people are stating that is what actually hit what caused the issue that was in Lebanon. Remember, there was that major explosion that happened over there several years ago in Beirut.
Yeah, the one that looked a little bit lightning-ish.
Yeah. And there's also been claims of it happening in China from time to time. But anyways, so it doesn't always have to be a telephone pole size. It can be smaller or larger depending on what you need. In this case, I think it was a small precision projectile. Because if you looked at the surrounding area, none of the other stones were even scratched.
And they were talking about in the article that they saw somebody at the stone running away, but I didn't see anybody in any of the videos, really.
Well, I saw one video where it was a car driving off, but
Great car.
But the problem is that is this the splice video? Because from what Bloom is saying, sounds like they're editing the footage, which if this was a crime scene, you would be tampering with evidence.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we'll have to see how this plays out still. I mean, there's still some sort of thing going on about it. I don't think it's going to be completely swept under the rug as much as they want it to be.
Well, two other things that are very interesting. One, you have you sent this to me, so, and to the group we're in. Apparently, the guy's stones are on government property.
Yeah,
that plot of land right there is under government control. It's not.
So if there is a crime scene on government property, what do you expect?
Yeah.
Exactly. You can't tamper. All the more reason you can't tamper with it.
What was the other one? Oh, never mind. It escaped my mind. Anywho.
Again, so very interesting with what is their rationale officially in terms of why they felt so called to so quickly go in and bulldoze everything down,
Oh, I don't know. Oh, by the way, I remember now. It was that several people have said that they would chip into the reconstruction of the stones,
Oh, interesting.
including one was the Pfizer CEO, so allegedly.
Wow.
Maybe this
So
was done to see how they would react.
shot heard around the world.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, think about it. What happened? CERN. So the Hadron Collider started acted up. What was the first major thing that happened? The guide stones. And what happened shortly after that? The former prime minister of Japan was assassinated.
That's right.
And then what happened between those two things? The prime minister of the UK resigned.
Along with 50 MPs.
50 MPs. And then you also had the basic societal collapse of Sri Lanka.
And what happened yesterday and today?
We have the Dutch farmers.
Yeah, well, that was last week, but you have
And last week we had the
Italian president stepping down.
Yeah.
Oh, we also had the prime minister of Italy that just resigned,
That's right.
and
Yeah.
the president saying that no, which they have something over there which is called what is it called? I think it's a tetrarchy or a technocracy. Basically,
Something like that. I heard the term earlier today.
It essentially is just a government in the place of no government, which is just Italy's way of saying you're not going to have free and fair elections until we say so.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons they're doing that is because if they do have free and fair elections, and then the populist groups would actually win the election, which is not the ones who are currently in power. Right now, you have a government in Italy which is friendly to the European Union and to the World Health Organization. If the populists were to take over, then Brussels would have a big issue on their hand because Italy is very powerful within the EU.
Well, I heard earlier today that people that work for the CDC and the WHO are leaving the company in droves because they see the writing on the wall with the jab, especially for kiddos. And the amount of kiddos who are either getting the Rona or passing away is something ridiculous, like 3,000% higher if they've been poked.
Yeah.
So
this is something that would easily be pulled off market.
Oh yeah, gets pulled off market when there's what, 10 people who
I imagine all the products, even like baby strollers and car seats, when there's a defect on there and there's a report like 2 or 3 stories that something went wrong with that product, they immediately pull them from the shelves. But here we got thousands being affected, and they're still putting commercials out on TV urging people to go through with this with their children.
Oh yeah. And what happened recently with the baby powder? I didn't hear any details, but there was some talk about it.
What about it?
Just that the talcum powder was somehow toxic or cancerous or something along those lines.
Oh, that's an old thing.
Is that old? Oh, okay.
That's old.
I just
recently,
and I was like,
that's been around a while.
That's like 20 years ago.
Oh.
Yeah, talcum powder, which is baby powder used by like Johnson and Johnson and others, were pulled, and the companies were fined due to high levels of cancer.
Oh.
For like example, if say a mother was using it, then they had a chance of potentially getting ovarian cancer.
Wow.
And amongst other things.
We actually kind of believe that cancer is a form of some sort of parasite. So which means that, is that saying that there are parasitical type eggs would be in the powder that would get into your system or whatever, one way or another, and begin a life there?
Oh.
I like your thinking, Sue.
So, and you're more worried about, the mother getting it. What about the kid, that you're putting it on
Oh yeah.
their body parts, and if the kid is resilient to it, and this also increases the chance of the parasites and cancer in children, with children cancers are
Mhm.
very common. And it's
Well,
not just that, but even, the types of jabs that they take throughout their childhood.
is that the reason why the World Health Organization essential medicine ivermectin was suggested for a lot of these things? Because the World Health Organization said that this was a necessary healthy medicine that was approved for certain things. And there are times when doctors can do these things off label because it was done by the World Health Organization's essential medicines. I don't think you guys have ever heard of this essentials medicine list. Have I said it enough times?
Yeah, it's so essential that they pulled it from the shelves and made it just about unavailable for the public.
Exactly.
All over the United States, that particular medicine has been pulled off the shelves. You cannot access it without going to any specialized places.
It's an essential medicine that's been around for over 70 years and has been given Nobel Prizes for its versatility in how it dealt with parasites, with malaria and West Nile
Malaria.
disease.
That's right. And it's
Uh,
still used all over Africa today. And the countries that is most highly prescribed correlate, surprise, surprise, with the lowest rates of Rona.
But
Yeah,
it's
that's very, very interesting, huh? No, nothing to see here though. Totally. Move along. It's really interesting that they actually put a stop to that. And it was widely available. Now you can get it in certain places, but it costs an arm and a leg now. It's no longer a cheap medicine.
well, it is a cheap medicine, but they've up what's that called?
Yeah.
Oh, what's that called when they
Like a price gouging?
no, they upcharge. They upcharge it
Yeah.
now because it was so useful on top of other medicines and vitamins because they were finding that similar things were happening. Not a doctor, but they were finding things similar when it came to vitamin C and zinc.
Well, I mean, they were doing the same thing with the that allergy medicine. What's the name of that? The medicine that they want you to carry around if you have an allergy reaction. The EpiPen.
Oh, the EpiPen. Yes.
Yeah, they made that expensive, insane.
Right. They jacked up the price like
Yeah.
ridiculous, like 6,000% or something silly.
Yeah.
I think it was before the major injection of price. I think it was $60 per unit, something relatively affordable, and it was also covered by most insurance.
Yeah.
And now I think it was like 2,000 per unit now, which is obscene. Nothing should be that expensive, especially when it's such an important medicine.
That's what they do, though. Any medicine that's super, super important. But here's another thing that I'm noticing. This past week, I've been kind of not only been going over about what's been going on down at the border, but I also been looking at the ingredients of the medicines. Those are the two things I've been really working on this week. I've been looking at the ingredients of common medicines that were widely available to help us, whether it's for cancer, whether it's for the certain types of blood disorders. And seems like diatomaceous earth is a common ingredient in about a lot of the medicines that we commonly need. So is there a chance that that is actually the main ingredient that solves a lot of our health problems if people would take that regularly?
Well, isn't that also an anti-parasitic?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I know you can give it to pets for fleas and whatnot.
Exactly. So I'm actually but Big Pharma would like to convince people that it's other ingredients that are in there that's making you well or better or whatever medicine that you're taking. And they said they actually did not list the earth in the main insert. It's actually listed on the page that talks about the specific medicine, but it's not in the insert. So what's up with that?
Yeah.
I don't think they want anybody to catch on, because most people aren't going to get up and read the inserts, much less go to the website and sit there and read all the ingredients that's possibly in each of the medications that they take. It's really dry reading. You can
Well,
actually put you to sleep.
it's very interesting how for decades, if not hundreds and thousands of years, depending on what layer you're looking at, that this shadow cabal has played this game of laser pointer and we're the cat. And they say, oh, look over here. And once people started waking up, it's very interesting because then you'd have Trump as the fall guy doing the same tactic, but in reverse of pointing out things. And then the media is forced to cover it. And so with his tweets or messages or what have you, and it forces the red light, if you will, to be over the target. And I think that that happened so many times during those 4 years that we got conditioned to focusing on truth. So much so, with plus all of the wins that were happening, that now with the resident in office, that they can't hide it. You know, they want to go back to the only strategy they know, which is lies and cover-ups and whatnot. And we've passed the threshold of consciousness where people, that's not going to work anymore. It doesn't hold traction. And you see, like, even Pelosi today, she was out there kind of spewing on the congressional floor about how Republicans were banning books and were trying to limit people from going across the state lines and whatnot. And it was hysterical because what have we seen the past 2.5 years, but predominantly the Democrats who are the ones with pushing the lockdowns, you know? And I just think you're going to see even more contradictions in the next few months. And so
Especially,
everything is
yeah,
crumbling, you know?
especially right now with the other thing I was studying about, the whole border thing. The argument that's going around in Twitter is say walls don't work. They're building tunnels, and the tunnels are leading up to all kinds of buildings inside the United States. So walls don't work. So I said, yes, but the tunnels, you're walking in single file, and people may be coming in by the hundreds, but the open border, people coming in by the thousand. At least if you put the wall up, you're limiting how hard the traffic flow is. And as for people coming in from the build out of the building somewhere in the United States, even if that is so, you can find that very quickly and put a stop to it. It's called plug the hole. You know, and it takes a long time to build these tunnels because they have to put air and everything in there. These are not just, you know, we're not gophers. You know, they seriously have to put a lot to it when it comes to digging a tunnel and running it along the border. And yes, they do have the money to do that, but it takes a long time.
Well, I think it's a win-win argument either way, Sue, because if you're talking about sleepers, then at least they're discussing the topic and acknowledging the existence of that tunnels are a thing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like their consciousness has been seeded for that, if you will. And so it gets to a point where it's like they hear something. It's almost like marketing, you know, like it's not going to reach conscious attention until you come across the concept like 7 times or whatever ridiculous the number is. And so it's the same thing here. It's like people have to be introduced to the idea before it really hits home. And you see that in so many different ways. For example, like even the fact that as of earlier this week, as I'm sure you guys have seen, that all the mainstream media outlets are being forced to finally question whether or not Biden has the cognitive capacity to remain in power and whether or not the 25th Amendment should be invoked. Well, surprise, surprise, what happened to Trump just a few short years ago? The same thing. So you have all these very woke, asleep people which is a paradox in terminology in and of itself. but they were foaming at the mouth with whatever the media would say to throw Trump under the bus. And it's, oh yeah, 25th Amendment. Yeah. He slipped down a ramp after giving a speech at some Army college graduation ceremony, and therefore he has dementia or some sort of like cognitive impairment, and he needs to be impeached. So 25th Amendment, 20. So again, you are having people become aware to what the 25th Amendment means, you see.
Yeah.
So now when you have the flip-flop take place, everyone will be on board in terms of understanding what that amendment refers to.
Yeah, it's very interesting how they've been putting all sorts of, now mainstream media has actually been somewhat forced to even admit that the whole laptop from hell exists and the things that are in it. I've noticed that some of them has even talked about a little bit about how Hunter, while some of them are still defending his existence, but at least some of them have been playing the video where Biden basically did quid pro quo about getting the money at such and such amount of time, or they won't.
Oh my God, have you guys been seeing the Elon Musk tweets?
Yeah, he's been trolling.
Oh, big time.
He's been really trolling.
Hysterical.
Well, the thing about the Twitter thing now is Elon's in a win-win situation.
Totally.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because on one hand, when if he decided to buy it, he would easily have better control of it. But on the other hand, if he walks away from it and they want to drag his bum to court and everything about it, well, then they're going to have to explain how all of this works.
Well, it's not just that. He either Twitter doesn't sue, and then at that point the fiduciary duties get kicked into place, and all of a sudden all the board of directors have to be removed due to their negligence of their fiduciaries, and they all get fined. Or
that's right,
they do sue, and then they have to prove that Elon was not truthful in leaving because of the bots.
Yep.
So this is all information that Elon wanted in the first place, but the board was negligent to do so. Now they have to do this as a form of discovery.
Can you say 5D chess?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we could see him not just gain control of Twitter, but get it for a fraction of the price due to the lawsuit.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't, let's say he leaves the law, let's say he wins the lawsuit, or he loses. He could lose it too. The stock prices would drop so much on Twitter that it would literally make it crumble from inside.
Yeah.
And the stocks have already fallen right when Elon did his little thing there the other day. The Twitter stocks wasn't very pleasant to look at. So if anyone who puts anything in there would be hitting their head against the wall. I actually think that it is a lot of fun to watch these sort of things, especially now that they're making it look like that Elon and Trump are having wars against each other, making it sound like that Elon hates. Yeah, that hates Trump. And I was thinking, you know how much fun it would be if mainstream media decided to put Elon on, one of their shows, thinking, oh my gosh, he hates Trump, let's put him on, and then he goes on the show and basically runs them down and say things that there's no way they would want him to ever say on the air.
Yeah.
Waking the other side of the masses up.
So we were talking about the 25th Amendment a few moments ago, and I have my handy dandy pocket Constitution right next to my nightstand. Do you mind if I read it?
Please do.
Absolutely.
So 25th Amendment ratified February 10th, 1967. This was shortly after the assassination of President JFK. it says, in the case of the removal of the president from office or his death or resignation, the vice president shall become president. That's pretty obvious. We all know that the vice president takes control in the next line of succession if anything happens to the president.
Right.
Or Section 2, whenever there's a vacancy in the office of vice president, the president shall nominate a vice president who shall take office upon the confirmation of vote by both houses of Congress. So let's say there is no vice president. The president that is currently in office nominates somebody, like as if it was any other cabinet member or judge or anything like that. Then the House and the Senate both vote on saying, yes, we approve of this person. And if they get approval from both houses, then that person takes the vice presidency. That's okay. This is where things get interesting. Section 3, whenever the president transmits to the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that he is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, and until he transmits them in written declaration to the contrary, such powers and duties shall be discharged by the vice president as acting president. All right. So the difference between the president and the acting vice president is that the acting vice president is not the commander in chief. All right. They only are dealing with the duties of the president, not as the political entity, not the military one. And here's the last part, Section 4. Whenever the vice president and majority of either of the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other bodies such as Congress may by law provide, transmit to the president pro tempore of the
Oh, we lost him again.
Uh-oh. Yeah.
Now, I heard an interesting theory that Hillary might try to sneak in.
yes.
Yeah.
Therefore,
You would love it.
when the president transmits to the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that he has no inability exists, he shall resume powers and duties of this office until the vice president and majority of either principal officers of the executive departments or of such other bodies of Congress may provide, transmit within 4 days to the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration and the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office. Thereupon Congress shall decide the issue, assembling within 48 hours for the purpose, if not in session, if the Congress within 21 days of the receipt of the latter written declaration, or if Congress is not in session within 21 days after Congress isn't required to assemble, determines by a 2/3 vote by both houses that the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties. The vice president will continue to discharge the same acting president. Otherwise, the president shall resume the powers of their office. Essentially, I'm going to make this as simple as possible because that's just a whole bunch of word salad right there. Essentially, the vice president can say to the president, I don't think you're capable of doing your job. And I have a list of the cabinet members that say so. And now we're going to give this to the president pro tempore, which in the Senate is the person in the Senate who has been serving the longest within the ruling party. So right now that would be, oh my gosh. Well, before the Democrats took over, the Republicans, that was Chuck Grassley.
That's what I was going to wonder. Yeah.
And now it's Leahy. Today now it's Senator Leahy.
Leahy.
And then they would also send it to the Speaker, who is Nancy Pelosi. And then they both say, well, okay, now we have an acting president. Now you're serving as the president, and the military is themselves by now until we deal with this problem. If we don't convene at this point, then we're going to have to give the powers back because we have not done it in time. That's essentially what they're saying.
Yeah, I
There's a
can see a
time.
meme made with that. I
They,
can
they,
just see Kamala telling Biden, yeah, I don't see you're fit for this job. Biden could turn around and say, I don't see you're fit for the job either. And both of them are saying, same G's.
but the thing is, if Harris wants to do this, she needs a majority of the cabinet to support her.
Yeah. How likely is that, guys?
I don't know. Depends on how loyal they are to the president or the resident.
Yep, exactly.
Or the whoever's in the basement pulling the strings.
What? But you know what the thing is? The president can pull a fast one and go to the vice president and says, "You're fired."
Yeah.
Right? He can, like, let's say we have another president, and this is not Biden or Harris or anybody else. Let's just say this is a hypothetical situation.
Right.
The president can say, "Well, it sounds like you're going to be invoking the 25th Amendment on me. That's lovely. You're fired. You're no longer vice president. Get out of here."
Yeah.
So
then
would that be an opening for Hillary to come in?
Well, at that point, the president can go, "I'm appointing this person as my new vice president." And then the vice president is this new person who would be the vice president candidate would then would go to Congress, and then if Congress says that person's okay, then all of a sudden you have a new vice president without having to run election or anything.
Wow. And the plot thickens. This could get fun.
You can become vice. Well, that's what happened to several times in the past where the president didn't like their vice president. Like Abraham Lincoln, right? His vice president during his first term was Hannibal Hamlin. Hamlin was fired, and then that's when you got Andrew Johnson. Lincoln was assassinated, and then
we lost him again.
Huh. Yeah.
There you go.
We lost you there.
We lost you. You might want to finish the story.
Where did I
talk about that Lincoln got assassinated?
Yeah.
Okay.
Lincoln got assassinated.
So he gets assassinated. Johnson takes over the presidency because he's the new vice president at that point. That's all I said.
Now, I heard another wrinkle to this, which is if we're playing the game of hypotheticals, 25th Amendment gets invoked, deep state is scared. They had already planned for something like this to happen because Biden was inevitably going to leave at some point. So they thought this is the opening to have Hillary come in. Then, as 17 said, scare event necessary. So I think what that's going to mean is we're going to get to the brink of World War III. I think North Korea could very much try to shoot some nukes at Taiwan. And I don't know if you saw the video from New York earlier this week.
Oh, you're talking about the Fallout one, where they talk about you're talking about. Oh, if you are in the if you see one, go into a building and be in the center of the building. No, you're not going to do that.
Yeah,
you're going to go into the area underneath like several feet of concrete because not a regular building is going to be able to survive that. You need a fallout shelter.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So it was very interesting to see that video because if you didn't know it was official, you'd think it was a spoof. It was so poorly written.
Well, remember, a lot of things was planned in the beginning because if you noticed all those news stories where Trump was visiting different countries.
Well,
what do you think he was talking about behind closed doors, especially between North Korea, between Russia, and a lot of the leaders in Europe, Middle East?
Well,
but again, ask like, why now is that video from New York being released? You know?
Yeah. Well, I can even
definitely up to something.
Yeah.
I can actually add to that hypothetical as you were just saying about Blue.
Okay. Yep.
I was reading or in listening that there were several members of Congress, and this is several months ago. They were told to brush up on how to deal with the confirmation of a vice president.
Wow. Yeah.
And the idea
Forgotten
had
about that.
the reason that they were told that was that they were going to say that Harris was going to step down due to her abysmal poll numbers. And so the idea was there were two people they were thinking that may take that take that vice presidency. They were thinking one, Hillary Clinton, or two, Michelle Obama.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
I've heard
they
that.
were also told to brush up on the appointment of an acting president and inaugurate them to become to be a full-fledged president. Because that has never happened. We have never had a vice president that was an acting president become full president. The only thing we've come even close to that was when, with JFK, you had LBJ, who was sworn in after the assassination, so that doesn't work. The next thing would potentially be Gerald Ford. And if you guys remember from history class, Gerald Ford never was elected to become president initially. It was because of Watergate. Spiro Agnew, who was the vice president of Nixon, resigned. And then Ford became the vice president under Nixon.
What was his position before that?
He was Speaker of the House.
Aha.
And then when Nixon resigned, he became president.
And why did VP resign?
The VP resigned. Nixon appointed Ford to become his new VP. And then Nixon resigned. And then Ford became president.
But why did Agnes resign?
Because he had more connection to Watergate. He was more guilty than Nixon. Some allege that he was the one that it was actually who ordered the op.
Interesting.
Yeah, imagine what the Bidens are guilty of.
Oh, well, I mean, do we need to make a list? We'll be here all day.
Well, what I was going to say...
They had this little rumor that possibly Trump could come in the back door if he wanted to come back and be Speaker of the House.
Well, Speaker of the House, or where I was going with my nuclear World War III comment was that with the scare event necessary, that there is precedent of, I believe it was Jimmy Carter, with a prior president who is able to broker a deal.
Yes.
With a warring party.
Yes,
and
it was. That was 1997 with Bill Clinton.
It was Clinton. Okay, and wouldn't that be a fascinating twist to have something like that take place with Trump at the helm? And then, obviously, I think about all the layers that are all coming together in one giant D5 moment. You know what I mean? You've got Biden with the laptop and the connections. And don't you love that? Like, literally every time Hunter lights up with his crack pipe, he's filming it, or chatting with his prostitutes, or, holding a gun that he bought illegally with him naked. It's so bizarre.
I only can think of
what a guy.
Words. I can only think of 2 words to describe this. You ready? Hold on to your chairs. Hold on to your chairs.
Okay.
Scorched earth.
Yeah.
He always has to deal with the big guy. He's been abused his entire life.
Exactly.
What would be the best upcoming? So what would be the best revenge? Tarnishing your father's career as the leader of the free world.
Oh, totally.
And destroying it. No, not just destroying it, utterly just making him considered the worst person in U.S. history to ever obtain or obtain it in some way. Just, it would be the most revenge that they're cold.
Yeah, it's not only that though, but remember, he was attached to all kinds of elites that also did a lot of things to him. So look what he does. He makes all of this public, and then is also getting all the elites to scramble their asses around as well.
Well,
So it's not just one person he's, lighting on fire and throwing darts at. He's doing it at the big pool as well.
well,
And I've
it's all,
heard rumors of that. Did
and
you?
it's,
Yeah, go ahead.
and another person who Hunter has supposedly had relations with,
Who's that?
Maya Obama.
No kidding.
There
Wow.
have been photos and video of those two in
Yeah,
the
the
same
Obama
room.
kids. Yeah.
Yes, together. Whether it's for
That's right. I did see a picture of that.
so, how close are the Obamas to the Bidens? Is it more close than we thought?
Well, that's why we thought that maybe possibly,
Well, they're
the
not.
Biden's in the basement, it's giving the orders. And you saw how close is the Biden's to, with the Obamas, because we do remember just not too long ago, Barack Obama was at a get together and a party, and he was getting all kinds of pats on the back, handshakes, hello, welcome back, good to see you, we haven't seen you in a while type attitude. And where was our president? Oh, he was wandering around the room like he was lost,
Like it
completely
was
misplaced.
like an old man with dementia.
Yeah. He looked like, everybody else was paying complete attention to
Oh.
Obama, but Biden, he was basically ignored. No one
Maybe-
wanted to talk to him. Nobody wanted to shake his hands or anything. He was just wandering
Mhm.
around the room aimlessly trying to find somebody to talk to. It was pretty sad, really.
And how
But
much
that-
of his cognitive decline could be partially intentional, so that he could plead, medical exemption if he goes to a military tribunal.
Yeah. How much can he plead to be said that I'm invoking the 25th Amendment on myself?
And
Mhm.
I'm sure you guys saw that Hunter's iPhone was leaked this past week.
Yeah.
And on the iPhone chat, he had nicknamed his dad Pedo Peter.
Yeah.
Oh, we knew about his fascination with sniffing.
Well, not only that, but like the journal that came out from
Yes.
his granddaughter.
Ashley Biden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lot.
It just show pictures of how he treats her even as an adult now.
Yeah. He's kissed
Very,
her on
very
the lips.
close. Yeah, very, very close.
It reminds me of stories that they talk about when it comes to the history of European nobility at one time, and royalty. You know how they used to keep
Sure.
the family, keep it in the family.
Keep it in the family. That's right.
No different.
In this case, literally.
Yeah.
Keeping it in the family.
Yeah.
So yeah, with all the stuff that's going on, it's definitely connected, and we are seeing the dots getting slowly connected and the puzzle pieces scooting closer and closer together, showing us what the picture is.
Which is
So
so
it's just-
exciting, because on
yeah.
the flip side, the old earth is crumbling, and you're seeing it all around, with all these countries that are in decline, with prime ministers or presidents kind of running like rats on a sinking ship, that you got to look beyond that to say what's on the other side. And what's on the other side is the collapse of the central banks in all of these countries. And what's on the other side of that? Gold standard. Look at Zimbabwe, how they're starting to add gold coins into their currency. And what were we told with Jasara, with Zim and things along those lines, So all of these kind of little nods are adding up that kind of further lend credence to this larger hypothesis,
Especially with the people that's actually caught on to what has been going on.
Exactly.
Like earlier, like Putin. One of the things that aggravated my mother to no end is she's like, well, are you for Putin? I said, well, Putin has his, issues. He's got a personality that's very colorful. But at the moment, I don't see him as the bad guy in this particular part of the story. And she got very upset. And I was telling her, well, think about it. If he's throwing, missiles and bombs at exactly where the labs are, that's telling you something right there. And she's going, there's no labs there and stuff like that. But think about it. They've been trashing Putin like crazy because he saw what was going on. He got himself off the central bank's power. He got himself off of Monsanto's power. He got himself off of basically the deep state power, and they don't like it. And look at all the products that are being destroyed all over different types of factories and stuff. And a lot of those factories produce very poisonous foods, especially with severe amounts of GMO and glyphosate and all kinds of chemicals.
Yeah.
So we're seeing everything that we know, the world that we know, the world that we are familiar with is disappearing. And some of the people are uncomfortable with it because they're wondering what's going to happen to their future. Here's the thing. We are going to have a certain amount of space that is going to be extremely uncomfortable for a while, like shortage of food, like shortage of water, shortage of electricity, and of course fuel. Yeah, medical supplies and fuels and all that. Things are going to be uncomfortable for a while. Definitely stock up. I actually, we talked about how long do we need to stock up. In my opinion, you need to stock up for at least a year's worth, because if the food that's short right now that's last year's food, then that means this year's food hasn't been taken care of very well. It's been destroyed. The cattle, the plants, and everything has been asked to be destroyed by our government. Then that means it's going to take a year for people to plant and replenish. So I recommend that you actually have a year's worth of food and water stored away. I know that's a lot, and that can be very expensive, but the life of your family is worth more than that.
Well, that makes a lot of sense considering the way we deal with a lot of our freight is by sea. And sea travel takes quite some time. It's not like you fly an airplane and you're there in 21 hours if you're going from like Australia to LAX or anything like that. It takes weeks, if not months. And this is all assuming that you have a no gridlock whatsoever. If you're going from one port to the other port, it's going to take you several weeks to get from one point to the other. If you're going from, say, New York to Hong Kong, what if you're dealing with a gridlock, like we were dealing with earlier this year, where ships couldn't even get into port? Now, we were dealing with that not just in California, not just outside of New York at one point, but now we're dealing with it in China. And we were seeing that happen back in early spring, late winter. That takes about 6 months to get from there to here. Now, if we put the calculations in, then that was about March, maybe April. 6 months is what? September, October?
Yeah.
So we may be starting to see some of the early stuff right now, and it should be much more heavy as we go into the winter.
Yeah, I heard that it would be more evident towards fall of when about the food shortage, right around fall. So definitely that would make sense. But it does take about a year to replenish any of the supplies. So that's why the following winter and the next spring, people have to replant the foods and everything. Nothing will be ready until harvest next fall, if you're lucky, and then getting all of that distributed all over the United States, it's a very daunting task. So it's not as simple as that. So we are going to be dealing with at least a year's worth of buffer to deal with. Now, that's not to say that we won't be able to get things back on track, but even though the warehouses were ordered 2 years ago to stuff their warehouses to the brim for a reason, now we know why.
Well, here's the good thing. A lot of countries are now going back to what's called a civilization state, which is basically when they go back to how they operate by themselves, outside of foreign influence. It's very similar to how it was done. It's very mercantile in nature. I think you guys, it sounds about right.
Yep.
Yeah, well, especially China is losing its grip on everyone. They constantly made everyone owe them, and that's where they got a lot of their power. And so if you actually look at what's even going on right now, the power that that they had and the power that the central bank had both worked on opposite ends on every single country. It's like coming in from one direction, coming in from the other. And so now those ties are being cut. Every country is wising up and saying, we're not going to play this game anymore. So, and it's the relations of trade is actually going to be changed as well as the education system. That's also imploding. And we will probably, a lot of people will be educating their kids, like they used to hundreds of years ago. The homeschooling thing is not really that foreign a concept. They tried to make it look like a foreign concept. So, if you look at how things are being aimed at family, look how things are aimed at being the industrial world, how these are aimed. They're talking about the whole new Green Deal thing. Even the electric cars are anything but green, and they're all out there to control. How much control would it be if you tried to get to point A to point B, but you have to reserve 30 minutes to possibly charge your car somewhere before getting to your point B? So imagine how much control that they're trying to put a grip, but they're squeezing as tight as they possibly can. And all of us and their systems and their plan is slipping right through their fingers.
And not only that, but like the energy needed to power the electrical grid to charge your car is based 90% on coal.
Right, which is not green. Exactly. I mean, look at the land grabbing that they're doing in different parts of the country. I mean, a lot of people are wising up and saying, hey, you want me to get rid of my cattle or my animals? Fine. It's all about greenhouse gases and all that stuff. And they're saying, nope, we need your land too. And it's like, well, wait a minute. If it's about, greenhouse gases and stuff, then you can just take my animals and I'll just like plant corn or whatever, but apparently they wouldn't have it that way.
Have you guys ever heard of echo cows?
No.
Okay. This is very Orwellian when you think about it. Okay. So echo cows, which have been authorized in, I think, few places in Europe, and I think they're currently trying to get them approved here in the United States. They are cows that have a slot built into them as if they have a gas tank. You know how when you drive a car, you open your gas tank, you open your gas tank and you put the nozzle into the tank.
Yeah.
Right.
They have this.
Wow.
And the reason they're saying this is because the digestion of the grass that the cows are eating is creating cow farts. And so this stuff now allows a liquid solution to be deposited directly into the cow's stomach.
Jesus.
They also been adding soy to their diet as well. They've been deliberately putting soy everywhere, which fattens them up for slaughter.
Yeah.
And soy is not very good for their tum-tums. They did the same thing with chickens and all the other animals as well.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but both Victoria and I, we don't really have much tolerance for red meat anymore. Yeah. Any meat. It's just, it's not appealing. I've noticed the past 3 times when I've eaten meat, I've gotten kind of somewhat sick to my stomach, nauseous.
It's been the same thing with us over here. We also said they also talked about that the animals are vaccinated. I'm not sure if that's true or not.
Yeah, me neither.
I think if you have high quality organic grass-fed beef, that's a different category, But I think 2 last comments, and then I'm going to have to jet. You guys can keep talking if you want. One is, I think part of the increasing intolerance of meat is that we're continuing to ascend to 5D, and that this is just too heavy. The energies are too much with the meat for us. And I had a very powerful meditation today when I was on the plane. I'd listened to a video by Joe Dispenza, and then in meditation, it was revealed that like when we meditate right now, which is what's so important for us, and easy and free and simple, and this is how we level up our vibration to kind of match the energies of the incoming 5D, is that remember in the Matrix when there are all those symbols that were kind of coming down the screen?
Yeah.
So I imagine that when I meditated, that symbols very similar to that were being kind of downloaded, if you will, into me in terms of light codes and just further activation of DNA strands, et cetera. And essentially, every time I do that, it's a tune-up, if you will, literally, in terms of adding to the ascension. So that was very interesting. And then the last comment I'll make is, remember that Trump made September disaster preparation month. And so I think there's a reason why he did that. And don't forget that executive order is still in existence in terms of the EBS. So we could be getting, if it went like DEFCON 1 and, there was like a nuclear threat, that you could have EBS. It could be used as a cover story to round up and arrest everybody so that people don't go out of fear of, nuclear fallout. But in reality, it's to limit people rioting or a potential civil war when people are being arrested. And, everything could come out. There's a Supreme Court ruling that will be made in October regarding elections and how those will be run and monitored in the future. And Hillary is already tweeting about that because she's deathly afraid, knowing, of course, that if they rule correctly, that this means the end of the deep state. So
yeah, well, definitely all the stuff that's going on right now, and it's just that they're trying to bring out all kinds of new viruses as well. So I mean, they could potentially try to lock down, but for real, it's not locking us down in a way that they want. That's probably if the virus thing is not going to get people to stay in their houses, then they probably would have to take the next drastic measure that would get people to stay in just to protect everyone.
Yeah,
and most likely maybe in EAS report over an EVS. The emergency alert systems is what replaced the EVS back in, I think it was 1994. So unless they bring back the old systems, who knows?
Who
It
knows?
depends. Who knows?
Yeah, they did try that text. Remember, Trump did.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of stuff coming out.
Alrighty, guys.
Always good connecting with you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Have a good rest of your night.
Good night.
Victoria says good night.
Good night. Hey. Good night, Vicky. Good night, Alex.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And we'll catch you on the flip side.
Absolutely. Yeah. So,
bye from Florida.
Absolutely. Awesome. It's awesome. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. So, Sue, you think this is a good time to wrap things up for now?
Well, actually, I kind of wanted to briefly touch on, Trump's ex-wife, and apparently, I was going to ask, I was kind of wondering, do you suspect it was murder?
I don't know. I haven't really been looking into it too much, so I can't say.
Yeah, it was just, well, I was joking with other people. That's very often that is how the wealthy folks end up.
Yeah.
Either they end up at the bottom of the stairs or drowned in a bathtub, or what was the other one? Hung,
drug overdose.
Yeah.
Car crash.
So
shot.
Especially at execution range. So
yeah.
And that's it's just that I think that it's showing that there's definitely a frustration mounting on the bad guy's side.
Yes. And I send my regards to the Trump family with their loss.
Yeah.
It's always terrible, especially when you lose a mother.
Yeah,
this
kids have been tweeting out, how they felt about all of this, and you send a condolence for that.
And remember, this is Ivana was Trump's first wife, and she is the mother of Eric, Ivanka, and also of Don Jr. So it's gonna be rough for them as they've just lost their mom. I believe she was 74 when she passed.
Yeah.
Which
And they
is,
have been passing around a commercial with her and Trump together with Pizza Hut, which was nice. We haven't seen that commercial in a long time.
what's funny about that commercial? Everybody normally goes to when you eat pizza, right? Most people just eat the pizza,
Tip first.
thin side first, right?
Yeah, tip first.
In that commercial, Trump goes to the crust first.
Yeah.
Which who knows? That might have been symbology when it came to symbolism when it comes to pizza references. Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? But he's always wanting to go against the grain. Definitely, against the norm. That was his thing. Does he really eat pizza that way though? I always wondered.
You would have to ask the people who serve him food because I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't think they even serve pizza at Mar-a-Lago, but or even at the where is that? I would think I would know that. You would think I would know this in Bedminster. he has a golf course at Bedminster.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it has been a very enlightening episode. This one's really, really good. And I want to thank everybody for watching.
Thank you.
So for HeartMind Expression, and oh my gosh, it's so confusing. I want to thank Katie for absolutely everything, and it also it's just absolutely, we would never be here without her. She's absolutely amazing for letting us do this and giving us a platform to talk.
Definitely, yes, I completely agree. Thank you, Katie.
So we end it there, and thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you all on the next show.
Have a good one. Good night.